Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Wednesday wherever you may be across this great country. Right off the top, I have spent probably more time in LA than any city other than Nashville and Washington, D.C., where I went away to college. And I know that there are unbelievably awful wildfires that are raging right now in Los Angeles. We talked about it a lot on Clay and Buck. Probably some of you that are streaming this or listening to us are in the LA area. So we want you to be safe and be able to have the best possible result for what is truly an awful situation. That means you and your families need to stay safe. You can always replace things. You can't replace people. We talked to Adam Carolla on the program a little bit earlier. He called in and told us about just how awful it is out there. So I think that is worth all of you contemplating and trying to keep eyes on. In the meantime, we'll talk more about that and discuss it in more detail as more of the aspects of those wildfires becomes apparent. But just want to mention that right off the top. It's playoff time. I'm going to be watching 5 straight days, much less serious. I'm going to be watching 5 straight days of NFL and college football, starting with college football tomorrow, running all the way through Monday night in the NFL, 6 wild card games, 2 college football games. It is now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, where you can win up to 100 times your money. Prize Picks offers MasterCard quick and easy deposits. And I love to play. You can play all over the country, Georgia, Texas, California. Over 30 states allow you to play, including my home state of Tennessee. It's easy. You just pick more or less on performance, and you are ready to roll. You can download the app today. Use code OutKick to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code OutKick. Download the app today, and when you play, you get $5. When you play a $5 lineup, you get $50 instantly. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's dive into a lot of different stories that are out there right now. James Franklin made some news in advance of the game between Notre Dame and Penn State, and he said he thought either everybody should have to play conference championship games or nobody should have to play conference championship games. Let me float my idea for how I would organize college football as it pertains to conference championship games. I would do away with them. I would completely and totally do away with conference championship games. That's Big Ten title, that's SEC title, that's Big 12 title, that's ACC title. I would do away with them completely. In my ideal world, we would go to 16 playoff teams. But in the event that those games have become so valuable for the SEC and the Big Ten, let me float an idea that I haven't heard discussed very much. Each team is guaranteed 4 playoff teams, okay? SEC and Big Ten guaranteed 4 each. This is in the 12-team playoff context, okay? And instead of a college conference title game, what if that game was a play-in game between the team that came in 4th and the team that came in 5th, so that effectively you are getting 5 playoff teams, and that is a first-round game to see whether or not you advance to the larger playoff. It's almost like a wild card, but it is a conference-specific wild card. So in this scenario, the top 3 teams in the SEC and the Big Ten would be in, but then you would play for the 4th slot from those conferences. If you really need to play that game because it has such value, why not make it a playoff game between the 4th and the 5th team and allow whoever wins that to advance into the larger bracket? Seems like a somewhat reasonable way if there is such value for the Big Ten title game and the SEC title game. Right now, the 2 teams that are playing are already pretty much always going to be comfortably in the playoff. That is, if you finish first or second in the Big Ten, first and second in the SEC, you're going to go to the playoff. A lot of teams out there would say, wait a minute, the reward for winning or coming in first or second, as James Franklin is pointing out, is actually more physical beatdowns for your team. You have to play an incredibly intense game against another very talented team. What about rewarding the teams that finish first, second, and third, advancing them automatically into the bracket, and then playing 4-5 in the conference in that conference title game weekend? Makes sense to me. Also, I would suggest starting college football a week earlier and allowing the college football playoff to end in an ideal world much closer to January 1st. Because right now you hold on and you have to drag it along, and it actually ends up in a tougher situation there. So a part of me thinks that that would be a solution that could make everybody be more impressed with the situation in college football. But that is my solution. I think James Franklin raises a very interesting point with his analysis there, and I think it's worthy of contemplation. Let me tell you, by the way, college football playoffs Thursday, Friday. Notre Dame right now is a 1.5-point favorite over Penn State. I think I'm going to take Penn State in that game. Stay tuned. I'm going to post about this, and obviously we'll be doing the fade tomorrow. And then on Friday, Ohio State is out to a 5.5-point favorite over Texas. I'm still toying back and forth with that. That's a big number. I think Ohio State should be favored compared to the rest of the field. But that number seems substantial to me in general. In fact, Ohio State now is minus 130 to win the national title. That is, there is a greater than 50% chance, according to the odds, that Ohio State's going to win the title. Texas plus 420, Notre Dame 5-1, Penn State 5.5-1. That is the breakdown as it pertains to the college football playoff odds. And again, the college football playoff begins tomorrow and is certainly going to be watched in this household, and I imagine going to be watched in a lot of your households with Penn State going up against Notre Dame. But that's my solution. I'm not a big fan of the conference championship games in general. I think they're even less important now. I don't have a problem with giving multiple teams a conference championship. I think what you're going to see in an expanded playoff is it becomes more and more like the NCAA tournament, where if you told somebody, hey, here's the deal, you're going to finish third in the SEC or the Big Ten, but you're going to advance to the championship game or to the Final Four of the playoff, everybody would rather do that than win the conference championship game. When you make the national title the arbiter, I think just having multiple teams share, it also makes it fairer, I think, in some respects, because everybody doesn't have an exactly even matchup in terms of how everything breaks down there. So I think that would be a solution in some respects for how you would put this into place where it actually could be better than it is right now. So that's my analysis on college football. 6 NFL jobs, I believe, Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. 6 NFL jobs now open. I told you yesterday that personally I like the Patriots job, 1A, 1B. Alongside of the decision, because I like Drake May and I think he's been pretty good, and I think Caleb Williams pretty good too with the Bears. I like their quarterback situation better than the other 4. I don't think we have an elite cadre of potential quarterbacks in this draft based on what I've seen, whether it's Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, whoever you are particularly enamored of. I'm not sold that there are a lot of guys worthy of being the number 1 overall pick. I looked at the odds, and right now, Cam Ward is favored to be the number 1 overall pick. So people have at least bought into the idea that either the Titans are going to take a quarterback or somebody else is going to trade up and take a quarterback, such that Cam Ward right now is the favorite. I don't know that I buy into Cam Ward, but certainly maybe one of these guys is going to be the Jaden Daniels of 2025. So we will see what ends up happening there. I did see this, and I thought it was super interesting. It is right now the 25th anniversary, today is, of the Music City Miracle game. So this takes me back in time. I was actually in the stands for the Music City Miracle 25 years ago. I was a young man of 20, college kid, and I was with my dad at this game, and we were sitting in the north end zone, which is where Kevin Dyson scored on that play. And if you start to think about that, and I know there's probably some people who are Buffalo Bills fans that are still going to argue it's not a lateral. I've seen enough footage now to convince myself that it was in fact a lateral. But I remember being in that stadium. We didn't leave early. How crushing it was. I think it was Christie who kicked the field goal. And if you remember in that season, and a lot of you are not going to remember in this season, I'm talking 25 years ago, so my memory may not be perfect. That was a season where Doug Flutie kind of came out of nowhere. Remember Flutie Flakes? Doug Flutie from Boston College, played in the CFL, small guy. He came and played for the Bills and had a great deal of success. Adam, look up the guy, and I can't even remember his name now. Look up the guy's name who ended up starting in that game. I think it was Rob something. They had a duel going back and forth all year long about who was going to be the quarterback, and sort of a competition. And Doug Flutie was a part of the sort of renaissance of that Buffalo Bills team. And then they came in and they ended up deciding, hey, for that game, we're going to start this guy, Rob, whose last name I can't remember. It's like Rob Thomas, but I don't feel like it was Rob Thomas, who was the starting quarterback. Rob Johnson. That's right. Rob Johnson was the starting quarterback. They kicked a field goal with like 22 seconds left or 23 seconds left or whatever it was. And then, boom, it was the kickoff, which was fielded by Lorenzo Neal. He then passed it back to Frank Wycheck, who threw across the field to Kevin Dyson. Subsequent to that, I've actually gotten to know all three of those guys. And I think we talked about this a while back, but Frank Wycheck died recently. Awesome guy. And he ended up at that time, Frank Wycheck was the morning show host when I was doing local sports talk radio in Nashville, and we were the midday show. Some people may have forgotten this. We used to come in, I think we were on 12 to 3 Central. That's when I started daily radio. Me, Brent Doherty, Blaine Bishop, who was also an all-pro Titans safety. We had a trio show called 3HL, which initially was called 3 Hour Lunch, but that's when we started at lunchtime. Then they changed it to 3HL, and that show name still exists. Brent hosts a show with Ron Slay and Dawn Davenport in the 3 to 6 range. We eventually moved to drive time. But I would come in every day, and a lot of times Frank Wycheck was still there because they would finish that early morning show. And I remember back then saying, man, there's no way that I would ever do early morning radio. How in the world do those guys get there every morning by 6 a.m.? Flash forward a few years, and I ended up doing super early morning radio. Starting at 5 a.m., I would be live with many of you for OutKick the Coverage, which was the Fox Sports Radio national show. And you're waking up in the 4 a.m. hour then. So I was even getting up earlier than those guys were. But I just remember it's funny how life can go. I would get there and I'd be like, I have no idea how these guys got up so early and did this show every day. And then I ended up doing a show that started even earlier than them. But I remember waiting for that 25 years ago on this day. It was bitterly cold, sitting in the north end zone of the Titans Stadium. And I remember waiting to see whether or not the official was going to announce that it was a touchdown or not. And that's probably one of the most consequential instant replay reviews of all time, because the Titans ended up going to the Super Bowl, winning the AFC that year. If they come back and they say it's a forward pass, it's a penalty, and there's virtually no chance that the Titans are going to find a way to win that game. Instead, they make the play that they did, and it's probably the single most iconic play arguably in the last 25 years in the NFL, because it's been 25 years since then. But certainly in the playoff context, it's one of the most iconic plays of all time to win a game, and I feel fortunate to have been there. Kevin Dyson now is a doctor. He went back, awesome dude, went back and got his doctorate, worked in, and I believe he still does, local Nashville area schools as an educator. Frank, like I said, went on to work early morning radio, and I think Lorenzo Neal lives out in California now, or used to, and was doing radio shows out there as well. So all three dudes, really good guys. Iconic play. I saw Kevin Dyson share that today is officially the 25th anniversary of the Music City Miracle. I can't believe it's been 25 years since then, but I was one of the fans that was in the stadium for that iconic moment of NFL history, and so it was, and still is, an amazing time and a game to have witnessed in person. A couple of other things I want to hit. I want to talk about this Fubo and ESPN deal. So I need to write on this long form. Give credit to Netflix. They have responded since the disaster that was the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight with what I consider to be really pretty flawless coverage. Christmas Day, no major issues with streaming. They have handled big audiences for Raw on Monday night. My 10-year-old, who's recovering from getting his tonsils out, said that it was the best Raw ever in his experience based on analyzing that. And so I give him some credit for that. And I watched, and I thought it was really pretty great and well done also. But Netflix has been able to handle the overflow of crowd that they would otherwise have gotten from streaming, and they haven't replicated the disaster that happened with the Mike Tyson and the Jake Paul fight. But when I saw this Fubo ESPN deal, Fubo was suing ESPN for not offering basically skinny bundles that allow those of you out there that just want to subscribe for sports and don't want any other channels. They weren't offering that opportunity to others. And so Disney has just come in, which owns ESPN, and basically said, hey, and Fubo sued saying it was an antitrust violation because they were restricting commerce, restricting competition, not offering what they believed should be offered. And I thought that was intriguing in and of itself. But then Disney just came in basically and bought the company. So I don't understand. Look, Fubo got a deal, right? They filed a lawsuit. They made it past summary judgment. They had some rulings in their favor suggesting that this was going to be an antitrust violation. And then they just sold the company basically to Disney. I don't understand how that eliminates the antitrust violation. The antitrust violation still exists. If anything, it's actually stronger evidence of the antitrust violation because Disney is so powerful that they just came in and bought the company that was accusing them of antitrust, which makes their market power even larger. I've never heard of anything like this happening. Maybe it's going to work. Maybe they're just gambling that because Trump won the election, the Federal Trade Commission is going to be less active in enforcing antitrust law. But I can't remember someone responding to an antitrust violation by saying, okay, we'll buy you too, and that working. That just makes their market power greater. I've never even, in all honesty, I've never seen anything like this. So I don't know how this is all going to shake out. What I am confident of, and I put up a poll about this in the last month or so, everything's going to move to streaming. The NFL has an out in 2029 of their existing contract. So that's 5 years from now-ish. And I expect the NFL to take it, and I think it's inevitable that Netflix and Amazon are going to end up with most of the NFL games. I also think, by the way, that ESPN is going to end up purchased by Amazon or Netflix or Apple or someone like that. But the money that Netflix and Amazon have to spend, and Apple as well, if they ever really aggressively get into the business, is orders of magnitude greater than what Fox, CBS, and even Comcast, NBC have to spend. And so I think it's likely that we're going to end up with virtually everything moving to streaming. And the reason why I said I need to write about this is essentially in the streaming universe, they are not adopting the pay-per-view model. Back in the day, pay-per-view was, okay, if you pay for the event, then there are no commercials. Now they're basically taking the existing sports infrastructure that would air on Fox or CBS or NBC or ESPN, which features commercial breaks, and they're relocating it to streaming. And this is a double dip, right? Because initially, the way that they were able to pay for so-called sports to be free, and free is in quotation mark because basically nothing's free, is they would put it on free over-the-air television that everybody could watch, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox. And then the commercials were used to pay for the rights fees, and that was the business model. Now in streaming, they're going to charge you directly to pay for Netflix or Amazon or Apple or whatever it is, ESPN Plus, and they're going to run the same commercials. Now, my theory of why they think they can afford to pay more money on this is because I think they're going to be able to target you much more efficiently with ad loads, which is why ultimately I think they're going to end up buying all of these companies, their own sports gambling company. It feels in many ways inevitable to me that that is the direction that we are all headed. When that will exactly end up happening, I'm not sure. But again, it feels to me like that is where we are headed. And I'll write longer form on this. But I do believe that the Christmas Day games, the success that they had there, putting playoff games on Hulu, it's going to get more and more complicated over the next several years to watch every game. And increasingly, they're going to take more money out of the average fan's pocket. And the day back in the day when you could just, grab one remote control, like this is my Comcast control, and you would sit down and every game would be easily able to find, I think that era is going to come to a close, which is unfortunate, but it, again, feels somewhat inevitable to me. Okay, last bit of news. We're still dealing with the aftermath of COVID. I think it factored in, frankly, to the overall outcome of this election. But I flagged this because I thought it was super interesting, and I wanted to make sure that I had it flagged. And it was the locations of where people are moving in 2024. This is U-Haul data for the top 5 states that people were moving to and the bottom 5 states that people were moving out of. And so my argument is that COVID accelerated a trend where people are moving to red states and choosing to live there, the Tennessees, the Texases, the Floridas of the world, because they recognized during COVID that there was more opportunity to work remotely and or you could relocate your business and it wouldn't have the same impact as you might have thought, and you took opportunities and risks that you otherwise wouldn't have taken because of COVID. So where are people moving? Number 1 state in America per U-Haul for moving to South Carolina. Interesting, the population of South Carolina is skyrocketing. Some of you may be South Carolinians. You may certainly be recognizing this in your communities. South Carolina, 2024, number 1 state for people to move to per U-Haul. Second, Texas. Not a lot of surprises there. Texas population continues to skyrocket. Third, North Carolina. I don't think there's a lot of surprise there either. Fourth, Florida. And fifth, Tennessee. So the 5 states, I obviously live in Tennessee, have a home in Florida. The 5, actually have two homes in Florida, and actually 2 homes, I guess, in Tennessee. Top 5, South Carolina, Texas, North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, all red states in the most recent election, presidential level. And Texas, Florida, and Tennessee have no state income tax. And I think what you are seeing is the data is reflecting the more money you make, the more likely you are to relocate to Texas, Florida, or Tennessee because, frankly, you are basically done with paying high taxes and you can move to those states and save a bundle. The more money you make, the more you can save. For instance, let's say you're fortunate enough to make $1 million a year and you're choosing between California, California, New York, and then your other options are Florida, Tennessee, or Texas. You could save over $100,000 in your pocket just by living in Florida, Tennessee, or Texas. And a lot of people are voting with their location and moving to red states. I see it every day for the last 4 or 5 years since COVID started, in particular in the community where I live in the Nashville area. So those are the top 5 all red states that people are moving to per U-Haul. Bottom 5, where are people leaving or not moving to? In other words, more people are leaving these states than moving into them. Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and California for a 5th year in a row has led the overall rankings for people moving outside of the state. This is interesting to me. Pennsylvania, obviously a swing state. Otherwise, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and California are left-wing blue states by fairly substantial margins. New York, I think, went down to 14 was the margin, or no, was it 12? 12, I think, was the margin in New York. New York was closer to being a red state than either Florida or Texas were to being blue states, which I think kind of is a reflection of how much movement we've seen. Red got redder, blue to a large extent got bluer. But California, 5 straight years, basically starting with COVID, Gavin Newsom's leadership, people are bailing on the state of California and moving to red states. We may not see the major impact of this in 2028, although we may see some movement in terms of electoral votes. By 2032, after the 2030 census, the map as it stands now is going to get really difficult for Democrats to be able to win because they aren't even going to have that blue wall, so-called blue wall that Trump shattered, of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan to protect them anymore. It's going to be way more difficult for them to get the math that they need to get because the red states are solidly red to a greater extent than the blue states are solidly blue based on the math of where people are moving. All right. I love all of you. Tomorrow we will have a NFL college football gambling show with Kelly Stewart, and I will do a regular OutKick show in advance of the games kicking off. I am off to go watch some basketball, 8th grade basketball. So I appreciate all of you. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP, stay safe in a Los Angeles area with the wildfires. And also, we got a major winter storm that's going to hit, including in my area of Nashville, that usually does not see major storms. So stay safe there as well. Again, DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow with double shows. Thanks for hanging here with me on OutKick, the show.